The Unseen Tenant. When Claire found the apartment, it felt too good to be true. The rent was cheap, the location was perfect, and the building had a certain charm that appealed to her. It was a bit old, but that only added to its character. She signed the lease immediately, thrilled to finally have a place of her own in the city. The first night was peaceful. Claire unpacked a few essentials, cooked a simple dinner, and settled into her new home. The wooden floors creaked slightly as she walked, and the walls seemed to groan occasionally, but she chalked it up to the age of the building. She was exhausted from the move and quickly fell asleep. In the middle of the night, Claire was awakened by a faint noise. It was a soft, scraping sound, like something being dragged across the floor. She sat up, listening intently, but the sound stopped as abruptly as it had started. Claire shook her head, convincing herself it was just the old building settling, and went back to sleep. The next morning, Claire noticed something strange. Her living room window was slightly open. She was sure she had closed it the night before, but maybe she had forgotten. She closed it again and didn't think much of it. Over the next few days, small, unsettling things began to happen. Items in her apartment would be moved ever so slightly. Her keys, usually left on the kitchen counter, would be on the coffee table. A book she had been reading was found on a different page than where she left off. At first, Claire laughed it off, thinking she was just being forgetful. But then the noises started again. Every night, she would hear the same faint scraping, sometimes accompanied by a soft thump or a creak in the floorboards. The sounds seemed to come from different parts of the apartment, moving around as if something or someone was inside the walls. One night, Claire decided to investigate. She turned off all the lights and sat in silence, waiting for the noises to start. Hours passed, and just as she was about to give up and go to bed, she heard it, the soft scraping sound, this time from the direction of her bedroom closet. Heart pounding, Claire grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the closet. She hesitated for a moment before flinging the door open, shining the light inside. The closet was empty, just as it should be. But the noise continued, now louder, coming from the ceiling above her. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she raised the flashlight, illuminating the small attic hatch above the closet. The scraping sound grew louder, more frantic, as if something was trying to claw its way out. Without thinking, Claire backed out of the room, slamming the closet door shut. She ran to the front door, only to find it locked. In her panic, she fumbled with the deadbolt, finally yanking the door open and rushing out of the apartment. Claire spent the night at a friend's place, too terrified to return to her own. The next morning, she called the landlord, demanding an explanation. He seemed surprised by her story but assured her there was nothing to worry about. The building was old, he said, and old buildings made strange noises. He promised to send someone to check the attic, but Claire wasn't convinced. That evening, Claire returned to the apartment, determined to figure out what was going on. She couldn't afford to break her lease, and moving again wasn't an option. Armed with a crowbar, she decided to open the attic hatch herself. The ladder to the attic was rickety, and the air grew colder as she climbed. When she reached the top, she hesitated, steeling herself before pushing the hatch open. The attic was pitch black, the weak beam of her flashlight barely cutting through the darkness. As she stepped into the attic, the smell hit her, a foul, musty odor that made her gag. She moved the flashlight around, revealing piles of old, rotting insulation and broken beams. The floorboards creaked ominously beneath her weight. Claire's heart raced as she approached the far corner of the attic, where the smell was strongest. As she drew closer, her flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. And then, she saw it. In the corner, barely visible beneath the debris, was a makeshift bed, a pile of filthy blankets and old clothes, arranged into a nest. And next to it, scrawled on the wall in dark, jagged letters, were the words, "Asterisk, I live here too." Asterisk. Claire's blood ran cold as she realized what had been happening. Something, had been living in the attic, sneaking down into her apartment when she wasn't there, moving her things, watching her while she slept. Suddenly, a noise behind her made her whip around. The attic hatch was closing, the light from below quickly disappearing. Claire screamed, rushing toward the ladder, but it was too late. The hatch slammed shut, plunging her into darkness. She pounded on the hatch, desperately trying to open it, but it wouldn't budge. The smell grew stronger, and she heard the faint sound of breathing, soft, raspy, coming from all around her. The last thing Claire heard before the flashlight died was a low, guttural voice, whispering in her ear. "Welcome home."